Welcome to Linux Out Loud, episode 122. I'm Wendy, broadcasting from a supposedly ordinary home lab that definitely does not have a cork board full of strings connecting governments, app stores, and your package manager. Nate and Bill are here in our virtual bunker, watching the latest For the Children laws try to turn your operating system into an age-scanning data signaling informant. So grab your tinfoil headset, double check that your kernel isn't phoning home, and get ready to trace the wires between Linux, lawmakers, and the not-so-hidden levers behind your screen in this episode of Linux Out Loud. All right, we're full of all sorts of not so happy topics this episode, so I'm really hoping that you're bringing something fun to kick us off with, Bill.
I am.
Good.
So I always kick something.
I always kick something, although I think this week it was Wendy's turn to kick something, not once, but twice. And sure she'll
a chair, swollen foot. It's fun.
I'm sure, actually, you know what? I may have something here that will help you with that. I always carry my multi-tool with me, which has,
Are you just going to remove the foot from the ankle?
I might be able to. I have some experience with that. I did my own ankle work, and I'm sure this will, stop by. I'll hook you up.
Yeah, I'll just swing over, no problems, just a hop and a skip and a jump, halfway across the country.
Listen.
Or no, across the country.
I watched an episode of ER, YouTube, and I read a book once about how the body works back in middle school. So I'm ready to go.
You got it covered.
Oh, he's all set.
You got it covered.
Hey, just make sure you spit on it before you start.
Right. Right.
Full on safe amputation coming my way.
Yes. Free, always happy to help my friends. I build computers and disassemble people.
Awesome.
Kind of the opposite of how it's supposed to go, but I don't know. I'm just a guy in the internet who deals in IT all day. So, but speaking of IT, I have done something kind of fun. So one of the problems that I'm dealing with at one of my customers is they're trying to get tablets like this one to be able to print easily. Now, anybody who's attempted to do managed tablets and printing knows that that is just not a fun time. So I have employed an often undermentioned, underutilized, and very powerful piece of open source software called Cups to create a print server that will aggregate all of the printers. And then I'm going to use the Cups server as the single point for the tablets to find said printers. So what Cups
I just want to say, you are doing the working on the two things that I dislike the most. Anything mobile and anything printers. And I'm not sure which one I dislike more.
As one of my colleagues told me, you're doing the Lord's work. And let me tell you, they're not wrong, because I have learned more about printer management than I forgot in over 20 years of doing this. All the repressed memories of bad drivers and spools and LPR commands are all coming back to me in the worst way possible. However, I feel like the advancements of Cups and Avahi or Bonjour or whatever you want to call it have made life a little bit easier and certainly more manageable. So far, so good. I'm piloting out on a couple of different Android tablets. I also have to pilot it out on iOS tablets. But I feel like that's going to be my end-all, be-all solution in this particular instance. And then on top of that, I want to tie in some printer monitoring through SNMP, or Simple Network Management Protocol, so that we're not paying a copier company thousands of dollars a month to tell us that we're low on toner on our fleet of copiers. So if I can get the monitoring system to trigger an email to the office manager to order the toner, I've effectively done the same thing as what the copier company charges us a lot of money to do on a very proprietary Windows-only monitoring system. So that was something kind of fun.
Okay, time out. Because, of course, I don't have what I guess you would call, business printers. But they all kind of give me a heads up when printing with them. I find that, crazy that as an office management system, they would charge you thousands of dollars to tell you that you're low on ink. That just sounds crazy.
In their defense, it's not just that. They provide the toner, they provide support in case any of those devices break. There's a whole support package that's baked into this. But
it probably tracks the number of impressions to include color or just black if it's if that's all it has. Also, it knows like the fuser has a certain lifespan, and so after so many thousands of pages, then they know that it's coming toward the end of the lifespan of the fuser, and they can send you those ahead of time. Yeah, I've dealt with all this before.
However, a lot of that, right, exactly. As far as the monitoring goes, that can all be built pretty easily using something like LibreNMS, for instance, is a great utility for that. And then just keep the copier company around to do the break fix work on the physical devices when they have a failure, because no one that I know or have ever met truly enjoys servicing printers. They enjoy destroying them, but not fixing them.
Pretty much. I like it when they work. I like the things that come out of mine, but yeah. If it's not working, I don't love it.
No. The only headache that I've had technically has really been more at home, and that's trying to get some of my Third Reality Zigbee devices to update their firmware over the air. So what happens is I say, okay, update, for instance, this light right here above me, and it will start, it'll get to a certain point and then die. So digging through Home Assistant and the logs, it's telling me that there's a transport failure between the coordinator and the device, and it's not enough for me to want to try and completely redo my Zigbee home automation or ZHA setup for 40-ish devices. That's a project for another day when I have more patience.
Time.
But something else that is cool is said client where I am working on the cups thing. We are going to investigate using Framework laptops. Thank you, Michael Tennell, who happens to be a friend of ours who does some work at Framework, for helping me get connected. And when I called the Framework rep and said, hey, I'm looking to get some pricing, I know how your stuff works, and a friend of mine buys his laptops from you, and I explained what my friend does for work, he says, oh, you must know Nate. And I said, yes, I do know Nate.
Oh, yay.
Kind of funny.
I help on some podcasts with Nate, and I've hung out with him virtually many, many times. And so the rep and I had a great conversation, and I'm really hoping that we can put some of these frameworks in at this customer, because the environment where I would use these is kind of an industrial shop. Laptops fall off of carts, they fall off of workbenches, and being able to just simply hand a service manager a bunch of replacement power adapter bits and say, laptop breaks, pull out, push in, done. Anything else after that, I can take care of easily. So really hoping that I can utilize Framework in their long term. They're a fantastic company. Their reps are great. I've enjoyed all of the conversations I've had with them so far, and I'd love to get them for internal use at our company for our own technicians. So I've been pretty busy as of late.
You've been more than pretty busy as of late, because there's multiple times that you're like, yeah, I'm just getting home, I'm just leaving. You've had some crazy long days lately, so that was a bit of an understatement.
And here in New England, we've had some crazy snowstorms as of late as well. Where my family lives, they got some of the worst of it at 33, 34 inches, but I know not far away, they were pretty close to 4 feet of snow. Wow. Fortunately, they have power back and they're starting to get shoveled out, but I cannot remember a time as a kid where I ever saw that much snow hit at one point. So dealing with outages at those sites and rerouting backups and disaster recovery has kept me very busy. But Nate, I understand there's a piece of software you're messing around with that's keeping you busy. Now, I've not heard of this one.
Before we get to the software, I just want to say for your industrial, because I do use Framework in a manufacturing facility, we do food stuff.
Right.
Still manufacturing. So what we have is like manufacturing plus biosecurity measures.
Yeah.
So you got to have machines that can actually take kind of a beating, and so we have framework. They've all been holding up. Although we've been going through quite a few screens lately, it seems. In fact, one lady in QA in Texas has gone through 2 screens now. I don't know what she's doing. But anyway, it's kind of forced me. I've talked about this before on the show, but I'm working on right now I have like bumpers I've been putting on them just to so for if the screen gets smacked on the side. And so these are all on every machine that these are deployed on, they have not broken yet.
Ooh.
Yet. So, but I'm taking it one level further. I know we talked about this before, but I do have full on protectors. Green. I think I like the green one better. Originally, I started out with black.
Definitely shows up good.
I like black, but the green is kind of fun, and
you can't lose it.
No, and the yellow is also kind of fun too.
That's why I prefer when my youngest is in fluorescent colors, is because I can find him.
Yes, you can find him. Thank you, 1990s, for your fluorescence.
Yes. I was about to say 1994 called, and it wants its crayons back.
Now, one thing I can say for sure about the framework too is, when they do take an impact and if you destroy one of these input cards, rather than having to buy, a new main board or someone whip out a soldering iron and hopefully make it. I mean, changing this for $10, not that this is an endorsement for framework because we're not being sponsored yet.
They could.
They could, yeah. They would. Anyway, but it's been great. So I do appreciate how well they've been holding up. And it's like almost 2 years now we've been running with frameworks in there. And so I think we have, I think, I've lost count. I can't remember now because, but at first I'm like, oh, we got 8 frameworks. Oh, we got 13 frameworks. Oh, we have 40, maybe 50 now between the 2 sites. And so they're now the preferred system, and people people appreciate the fact that they have a machine that has high resolution screen. The biggest complaint, and I don't know if this will be an issue for you, but the biggest complaint I have is after going with the framework, all those 1080p screens that we have look blurry now. That's not the fault of the framework. So anyway, still some work being done on that, but I really hope I can get the lower shield to work as I want. It's just it's going to be a process yet. There's a lot of challenges in that, but it does actually go and stick on and hang on. But I have to do some better clearances in the back for when the lid opens, so that it doesn't, it actually clears properly. And then, but also it's got to be able to clear, but also hang on. So I don't have that quite worked out yet, but I will. And I don't think it looks
there.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think it looks half bad though, when it's all put together.
No.
So
it's pretty solid.
And it should actually take, now these are theoretical because I'm not actually going to test it because I don't have the money to test it, nor would I not have guilt doing it. But
it will be tested, but it'll be tested at
by somebody
work.
Else,
yeah. And so you'll just be able to keep track of that data as you're like, this machine broke or it didn't break kind of thing.
Right. So it should sustain approximately a half to another meter of survivable drop. It should be able to. An additional on a hard surface. Should be able to. That's based on rough calculations of the material properties, but it doesn't take into account, how does the actual machine itself take the impact, and if it's going to be able to,
right.
So, but I'm not going to test it, but it should be able to sustain more of a fall then. So at least the corners will then be protected all around because, with this being an open area, but the screen's got to come back. Anyway, but yes, I would say. And that if they break it, they're repairable. That's pretty huge.
Yeah.
So Nate, tell us about this piece of software that you've been getting into called Deskflow, because it's actually not one that I've heard of before.
You have actually, but it's just by a different name. Remember Synergy or Barrier?
Yes, I remember Synergy.
This is Synergy or Barrier, but Wayland-friendly.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I briefly talked about it before on here, but I didn't actually do an article and go through the process of really writing it up and everything else. So go to cubiclate.com. I got an article there. But what I want to really get down to is the more the use case in the nutshell of why I think this is great. So when I'm at work, I primarily operate off of Linux there. Now, when I started, it was primarily off Windows, and Linux was just kind of a side. But as I've gone on and really like refined the tools that I use to do my job, really everything pretty much became easier on Linux. But I still want a Windows machine as kind of a reference unit. So if I'm having an issue with something, I can see, is it a Linux issue or is this a Windows issue? And then it acts as and I have another screen there. So I have the way it's set up. I have one big dual up LG screen in front of me, and then I have a wing that's Linux, and then I have the laptop below, and then I have just one of the wings is the Windows machine. Originally, it was 3 screens for Windows, and then it's just kind of been migrating to pushing the Windows out. But I still keep that there, and the machine is actually it's not really supported to have Windows 11 on there, but it does. So there you go, Microsoft. You're trying to do people dirty. Anyway, but you can sponsor the show too if you like. We can talk bad about you while you and pay us. So that'd be cool. Anyway, so what I do is I don't want to have to go from change mouse keyboard, and actually you offered a really good alternative to using a Raspberry Pi, doing a KVM through a Pi, but this is all virtual. It all happens through the Linux machine, and what I do is I can then, when the mouse gets to the end, which you've used Synergy before, it just goes on to the next screen, and then it plays some fun game with the clipboard and the mouse movements and everything else. So in my office, at the Linux machine, the Windows machine, but then I have another machine up on the wall that has like current stats of things. I can watch backups as they're actively being taken. I can look at metrics going on, like in the just kind of have things up just to have up. So I'm always. It's a nerdy thing. Is it necessary? Probably not, but I like it. And I just, some spare hardware lying around, just kind of threw it together and put it up on the wall. And so instead of having a keyboard and mouse attached to that, I just use the keyboard and mouse from my Linux machine, and I can just go and do stuff over there. Every once in a while, I'll spin up Vice, the Commodore 64 emulator. Actually, it's a Commodore emulator, and just have it do dumb things, just to bring a smile to my face. So I'm working, I'm like, and then go back to work. But anyway, all that being, it's fantastic. The configuration's the same way. It's very verbose. I will say I'm having a little issue sometimes with the clipboard not working like it should. I have everything configured like it, and it should be working, but it's not consistent. So, but Synergy also wasn't very consistent either, even with X. But the point is, the real point is I'm able to use one keyboard and mouse, multiple machines, makes for a quick whatever, and I can go on with life. And so, it's handy. Is it necessary? No, but it's really cool and nerdy, and so that's really why I like it. So I actually learned about it from Steve's very own. I don't know if you remember him from he does sometimes he joins Linux Saloon, and he's one that first came to first brought it to my attention, and it didn't work 100% for me initially. I guess it's not working 100%, but now it's good. It's not buggy like it was initially. It works really well, and I highly recommend it if if you want to control multiple machines with different OSs from one keyboard and mouse.
I'll take a look at that. I like how they've made it Wayland-friendly, and even just looking at my setup here in this room I'm in, that might come into play.
Yeah, it's nice. Or sometimes too, like as silly as it may sound, I'll use it with I have like a Windows Surface tablet, and it's got a terrible keyboard on it. But instead of taking my framework on the plant floor, if I know if it's going to be maybe like a little bit dicier, I'll leave the framework and then take something else like a Surface, because if the Surface breaks, it's a Surface. I mean, I know they're like premium machines, but they're definitely sub-premium when it comes to compared to framework. So anyway, the point is sometimes I'll link that up with the Synergy as well. Not Synergy. Deskflow, almost said Barrier, and then I can use my keyboard and mouse that I really like, and I can use because I have a keyboard just like this at work also, and I can use this keyboard instead of the little whatever it has that's on the little cardboard plasticky backing. But anyway, so I guess the point of that is Synergy was an awesome thing a decade or so ago. going to Wayland, kind of lost it. I got it back. Super happy that I have it. I can do it again, and it makes my face smile a little bit more. So, Wendy, it looks like get some new robotics things going on here, huh? New parts?
Well, the whole ecosystem of First Lego League is changing starting next year, and it'll be kind of a weird crossover year where you can use the EV3s or the Spike Primes that we've been using, or you can do the new system. And it has to be like either or, and I'm not exactly sure how states are going to run this because the new system is completely different. I'll throw a picture up here of the current system, what we've been using, which is the Spike Prime, and then we've had Pybricks firmware on top of that. So it's built with Technic Legos. You have a hub, and inside that hub, you can plug your motors and your sensors. There's a variety of different sensors with a color sensor, ultrasonic, force. There's a gyro built into the hub. So, I mean, you have some different stuff there. And it's been really fun. It's been interesting. The kids have learned a lot with it. Well, with these new systems, now instead of having two motors that make a drive base and you tell the coding, hey, these two motors make a drive base, now it's just this one, and it's really pretty small according to the pictures, that it's two wheels together. They're put together with old school Lego connections instead of the Technic Legos. The cool thing about this new program is right now, the FLL robots are 100% autonomous. So they write all the code, the robot goes out, it does its thing, it can come back, they can change the attachments, and then send it back out. With this new system, it's going to be a little bit more like First Tech Challenge, where you have two different teams on the same playing field and you have driver controlled. Now, the controller on this thing is like itty flippin' bitty, according to the picture. Like I said, that'll also be pictured here. And so I really got some torn feelings about this and how our team will go forward in the coming years. And I'm still doing some research on this because I feel like this new kit, which they're calling their computer science and AI kit, is great for the classroom because you can get it started really quick. You can have kids learning, experimenting, run through these lesson plans. But when it comes to the engineering side of thing, I think we're losing all of that with these robots because you can't build the same complicated attachments and jigs and that kind of stuff that's going with it. So I feel like the old kits are better in the sense of like for an after school competition kind of thing. I love two teams working together and trying to build a game strategy, which at one point, you didn't know anything like each other, and now you're coming together and you're building that strategy out. I love that. But I don't love how breakable these robots might be. I don't love that the downgrade for us, especially where we've been using Pybricks, and the kids have actually been using the written MicroPython on Pybricks in order to build their code. So I've kind of got a little bit of a yay, this will be awesome part, and like I'm not super excited about that part. And so I knew that on the Spike Primes you could connect them to controllers, and so that's actually something that me and my youngest did today. Was we connected one of our Spike Primes that we have here at home to an Xbox controller, and so he was driving his robot around using the triggers to do the turns, and the left stick was his forward and backwards. And then he only had one attachment on the one that he built really quick. And so A was down or B was up. One of them, one of the buttons was down and the other one was up. Driving around, having fun. And it was like, okay, so if I had my way, if Wendy got to choose, we would stick with the Spike Primes, let them be used with like an Xbox controller so you can still have that driver controlled collaboration thing. Kids can still do the engineering of really cool things on the robots. And then we could keep the computer science and AI kits for the classroom, but for the after school stuff, for teams that are meeting for longer, really being able to push that learning experience, because I feel like the way it's changing, is a downgrade. When people first be like, "Oh, you're building Lego robots, how cute," and you're like, "No, look at the time, the energy, the engineering, and the code that these kids have built," and they're like, "Oh, those are really cool, not these dinky little Lego robots," and I feel like we're losing that with the change.
Okay, for starters, I think the Technic construction is more robust, just in general.
100%. Yep.
And then, secondly, now I realize I'm extremely biased, and one, I will immediately just agree with you anyway. That's one thing, Wendy. But on the other side of it is, as soon as I saw AI, I wanted to stab myself in the head with a fork, because I'm just like, I'm so tired of hearing anything AI. It's like, computer science
and I know one of the pushes,
intelligence.
especially with like a teacher fellow like coach that I was talking to, they're like, well, AI is coming as far as like it's out there, and so they need to be learning to use it. And I'm like, yes, 100%, we need to be learning to use it. Heck, we even have our FLL team using it for certain aspects, but it's not writing their code. It's not writing their code. And they're using it for research purposes or that kind of thing. But then they're still like teaching them to check their references, right? And so one of the reasons I didn't like the official Lego firmware is because I felt like it had too many kid gloves and they weren't learning, hey, you need to attach your motors into these ports and then tell your code where you attach your motors, where it was auto doing that. I feel like this is going to be another situation where if you've got 30 minutes in a classroom, great. But as far as like learning the actual ABC steps to get you from point A to point B, it's going to be severely lacking.
The other thing too is AI is great as an analysis tool, and yes, some people use it for for agentic purposes, and people use it to vibe code. But if you don't have the fundamental understanding of how process and procedures and how parts are put together, then what are you really learning?
Well, and I'm one of those people that I have to know the why behind what we're doing, because without the why, I won't remember and it doesn't make sense. And my oldest boy is very much the same way. If there's no why we're doing this, it's in one ear and out the other. Like it doesn't matter. It won't stick.
It's funny because my dad, who has written scientific papers his entire career, has often talked about how AI has helped him get through the mundane and focus on the things that are important. And for the kids, Nate, to your point, making sure that they have fundamentals of how things are put together, just that in itself will teach them the way that they should look at how software is put together. The AI will feed you back whatever you feed into it, but that doesn't mean it's going to be right or work as expected.
Yes.
Right.
So I think you're doing it the right way, having your kids use it for research and analysis. And there are some great models that do a good job of that. But the actual coding, the logic, the troubleshooting, the remediation, submitting new code, checking that code out, checking it back in, that I don't think could be done with AI the right way. That requires trial and error.
Yeah, and that's kind of like once you have the framework down, once you understand how it works, then it's easier to speed up some of those, like as your dad would talk about those everyday remedial tasks where it's just the boring and same old, because you can like scan it, check it, and be like, oh yeah, we're good, right? But if you don't understand the basics and the underlying formulation underneath that, then it's really hard to write good quality code or to know that what you're looking at is right. And if you run into an error and this is what was spit out for you, how do you solve that if you don't understand the basic building blocks of how it's supposed to go together?
This actually, all this like AI stuff kind of makes me think about, there's an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. This is season 1, so it's a little bit campy, but it has a really good message about, it's called When the Bow Breaks, season 1, episode 17. Not that I don't have that memorized. But anyway, the idea is there's this really advanced planet and it cloaks itself, becomes invisible. And they have this advanced computer system. They didn't call it an AI because, it was 1988 or whatever, 87 when it came out.
Right.
February 88, but what does it matter? So the where essentially the computer called custodian took care of everything for everybody on the planet, and they just kind of explored the arts, whatever. And it had been so many generations that they didn't know how the computer worked. They just, it just always worked. And then there was an issue where the reason basically that the inhabitants of this planet kidnapped the children off the Enterprise, and that's kind of the story. But because they essentially all this power and this technology was actually killing the people who live there, and they didn't understand that because they had no knowledge. Anyway, they didn't know how the technology worked. And so I guess my fear is in all of this, and I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen with adding AI into first Lego League. Anytime I hear AI, I want to, say it.
Roll your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. AI. Ooh.
Wait, does that mean you can actually roll your AIs?
Oh my goodness. Right, definitely. That needs a boom.
Yeah. So I think is AI being used as a learning tool or being used as a crutch? Those are two different ways you can utilize it. And and my concern is with a lot of this that it's being very crutch-like and not tool-like. And I'm not going to say that I'm not unguilty of using it as a little bit of a crutch, but I don't just use it and not understand the why. Mm-hmm. And so I think as long as you understand the why of what it's explaining to you, and I'll actually interrogate it sometimes, like, okay, well, why is this? And it actually gives me a good full explanation. It's actually really nice, and I enjoy that. But it comes down to, like, how is it being utilized? And I think that sometimes I think maybe in the classroom, we shouldn't have Chromebooks for the kids. Maybe they should actually learn to write. Maybe they should actually do these things that are a little bit more backwards. Maybe we should roll the Apple IIe in on a cart for when it's time to use a computer. I don't know. Maybe I'm an old curmudgeon. Maybe that's my Gen Xery coming out and being like a crotchety old man, wave my cane or walker in the air. I don't know. Robotics is cool. Lego robotics is cool. I just hope they don't take away the cool aspect, which is really building and understanding something. That's the cool part. That skill is cool. But I'm probably overreacting.
It's definitely it's a give and take, right? And I think AI, because it's been so catchy and other things, that they're like, oh, this is something that maybe schools can get the funding and grab. I know for a lot of like actual teams, there's a good possibility that they're going to shut down because they're using the EV3s for a reason. They've never upgraded. They don't have the funds, another like $500-$600 in order to upgrade to this. So I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I've got like I love the fact that they are going to be combining like two teams working together. I love that aspect of it. I would love it to see them have an auto portion and then the teleop driver control portion. I just don't love the new robot form for that multitude of reasons. So change isn't just coming to our robotics program. It's coming all over the place. We talked recently about Discord and its age verification stuff, and it doesn't stop there. So we've got California and Colorado who are pushing a new age verification law that doesn't just target websites and apps, but it is explicitly reaching all operating systems. That includes Linux, BSD, SteamOS, and all of those above. So what this law kind of lays out is requiring OS vendors to collect your age at the account setup and expose it to a real-time API so the apps can verify and query what age group that you fit into. So are you someone that's under 13? Because as of we know, a lot of the laws already in the United States and other places that if you're under 13, they can't collect any data on you. Are you 13 to 15, 16 to 17, or 18 plus? And if we're looking at this whole situation, okay, so yeah, that's pretty easy for Windows to do. It's pretty easy for something that Mac is doing. And I think a lot of the phones, if you're setting up a kid's account or whatnot, it's already collecting those data at some point, at some level as you're creating those. But it's not something that is currently built into the Linux operating system. And if you look at how segmented Linux is, which some people say is a downside, I say it's a great side, right? There's lots of flavors, lots of stuff going on. But if you're looking at that, there's no way to seamlessly do this across Linux, not only for operating system, but the different devices that go with it. So, as part of this, they want a reasonably consistent real-time API so that the covered apps can request back to that age range. That you go to open up an application and it can say, hey, what's the age of this person, and then from there be able to decide what's being collected, what's not being collected. Do you have access to this thing or not? And the craziest thing about this for me is not just the setting up, but the fines that go with it. Big fines. So you can have a fine from 2,500 to 7,500 US dollars for not following this new law. And it, like I said, it's not just California. It is also Colorado. So California kind of led the way with this, and Colorado is somewhat jumping on the bandwagon. I know we were talking about this a little bit before the show kicked off, and I know when you jumped into the show notes, Bill, you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe we are talking about this. So what were your first thoughts? What are you thinking? Especially not only as someone who's been in Linux for quite a while, but also someone who works in the back end, the networking stuff. You have Linux applied on a lot of different operating system or a lot of different businesses and networks that you deploy.
So first, let's talk about accounts and scalability, because that's what this starts off as. Mm-hmm. So I think of all of the different Linux projects that I touch: Proxmox, Arch Linux, Fedora Linux, Bazzite, Debian. All of these projects are now going to have to stand up age verification infrastructure to download them.
Mm-hmm. No,
what about OpenSUSE, of course.
Okay, all right. No, please go on.
No, don't leave that one out.
Sure, but let's step back a bit, okay? And let's look at what Linux really is. Linux by itself is a kernel. That's it. It's a kernel with a bunch of other layers added onto it, much like an onion. Now, for someone who's going to install, God bless them, Linux from scratch, how are they going to do an age verification on a piece of software that doesn't technically exist? So the only way that this is actually viable, in my opinion, is to embed it in the kernel itself.
We know exactly what Linus's take on that is going to be, because I remember what he said to NVIDIA.
And we are not allowed to say those kinds of words on this podcast.
Matt would,
and that's we don't have the red edit button turned on.
The after hours version could, but I think you all know what he said.
We can all figure out what he's probably saying when he listens to this out in whatever remote part of the country he's in.
Right.
So from a practicality standpoint of embedding this in the kernel, I don't see any other way of making it work. Now, on the sysadmin, business, IT side, there are a lot of custom appliances running Linux in the background. Forget the Steam Deck. I'm talking about network equipment. Now you're going to have to convince those vendors that everybody using that network equipment is of the age groups that they say they are. And then most infotainment systems that are running in modern vehicles, guess what? Those are all Linux under the hood.
Right. Yeah. So where does it stop? And I think Midnight BSD has put their foot down and they're saying, hey, the maintainer has already changed their license and California residents are not authorized to use Midnight BSD as of January 1st, 2027. And that themselves are like protecting them from the liability, right? We're not having this package inside of our OS. And if you're from California and probably eventually Colorado, if theirs passes as well, you're out of luck, right?
Okay, so here's another example for you then. Let's say you purchase a computer in Kansas and you move to California. How would you become compliant with the law if the OS is already pre-installed? Are you going to be forced in theory to wipe your OS and install a California or Colorado compliant version of the operating system? And how would that even be enforced? To me, that seems a little out there.
So I want to step back just a little bit and talk about the law, because I did actually dig into it. And I'm not a lawyer. I was a barracks lawyer at one time. I was really good at the regulations in the Army, but not an actual lawyer. So I was looking at it. So this is AB 1043. And so the bill defines operating system provider. So that's an entity that develops, licenses, or controls the operating system software on a computer, mobile device, or any other general purpose computing device. That's what it is. So the language targets commercial entities with significant control over the OS distribution, licensing, or development process. So this would, of course, hit Microsoft and Apple, Google with Android, and potentially others that sell or license the OS software in a structured way. So I want to boil this down to me. And so based on that wording, that would mean that SUSE would fall as an operating system provider, but OpenSUSE would not, because they're not a provider in the commercial sense. So it's a community project with separate volunteer-driven community distribution sponsored by SUSE, but doesn't directly own license, or it's not directly owned or licensed by SUSE in the same commercial sense. So Tumbleweed and Leap, in this case, are free open source projects distributed under community governance, and the code is built and community maintained. So there's no direct licensing or proprietary control by SUSE there, which makes it much less likely that SUSE as a project would be considered an operating system provider under the bill's definition. Obviously, this has not been challenged in a court yet, but that is one thing. So this is why you see now a company that's taking a lot of heat lately is System 76. Not sure if you knew about this, or if you've seen that, because they're trying to comply with it, but because they are a provider, they actually bundle it on the computer.
Yes, but there is no license with it, right? So they are bundling the operating system with the hardware, but you don't have to buy a license for it. You could upgrade it to a new version, whatever. Like that, they're not selling a license for the software.
You can buy a System 76 with no license, just like you can buy a framework with no license.
No OS. Yeah, 100%.
No OS at all.
So what I was saying, though, is in the context of System 76 selling a computer with Pop! OS, that does fall under the definition of operating system provider, because they're providing the operating system. If they sell one without an operating system, then it doesn't fit on that, because then
and System 76 is based out of California, right?
Colorado.
Okay, Colorado.
They're out of Colorado.
Now, so here's the challenge. California, although shrinking rapidly, is one of the largest economies in the world, just California by itself. Now, they're doing their best to destroy that, but whatever, that's on them. So it's basically complacent, lazy people that aren't paying attention to what their government's doing to them, and that's really the problem. Now, whether other states fall in line, a lot of times it's whatever California does, every other state kind of follows through. Not entirely, because we have all these California laws, like everything in California causes cancer. Not all states have adopted that belief. I think California causes cancer, actually. But so not everyone has fallen in line with that. And so there's a possibility that some states will push back or not. I think this is going to be one of those dirty things that's probably going to last for a while. And this is actually one of the fears I had years ago. We're talking like late '80s. So like I was actually thinking about this sort of thing in like 2008-7 timeframe, as computers became more required for things. At least when I was in the military, went from things being more analog to things being more digital. I'm like, wow, there's going to come a point here when there's going to be a lot of control on all this stuff, and the fun is going to be sucked out of the room, typically by big, corporations and government. Basically, is what destroys everything, as far as I'm concerned. Big corporations, I should say, not small ones. There's a big difference. So,
well, and I, as a parent, understand like wanting to protect my kids from certain things on the internet that's out there,
sure.
right? But
Mhm.
me as the parent take that on myself to block certain things on my network, to my kids only have access to the internet at certain times of day because, gosh dang it, you need to sleep. and those sort of things. And so this is one place where Ryan and I definitely agree is it's not my state of Idaho's job to make sure that my child is protected from XYZ, right? I feel that that's part of my job as a parent to on certain things, where is my child's maturity level? Should they have access to this thing? Yes or no? Social media is one thing that my kids have stayed off of in general. Now that my daughter is doing paintings and selling certain ones, she's like, oh, I guess I need a social media account now. And she's somewhat struggling with that. She's like, because I haven't had one in forever. Last night, she had some videos that she was putting up, and she's like, oh yeah, I forgot hashtags are a thing. I should probably add those to help with views and the like for her artwork. So, I mean, that I feel is very individualized as to like what applications should my family have access to and when, and how should they be utilized inside of my home.
Well, California is also known as, one of the big tech hubs of the world.
True.
So if this
Yeah.
is pushed on a bunch of businesses, how much is it going to cost them to become compliant with this versus saying, you know what? Maybe this is just the straw that broke the camel's back, and we're going to go find someplace else to hang out and not have to deal with this.
And that's already been going on in California with a lot of other things, and a lot of companies
for
are leaving California
too,
to like Austin seems hot and miserable there, but I guess it's less miserable than California's laws. So I don't know. With that also, I don't know. I mean, it's so far it has gone into effect, and so it's unchallenged.
Right.
It does seem,
100%.
and I kind of, this is where Ryan and I are quite aligned with things. It does seem like a conspiracy that all these countries are kind of falling in line with this whole age verification thing. And I think it's just a surveillance. It comes down to a surveillance situation where I really think that I think what happened was the internet was never supposed to be a thing. And when they let it out, and then what had happened with the internet and the interconnection of knowledge and the free exchange of information, I think they didn't realize how much control they were going to lose over everything. And I believe this is kind of they're trying to pull back on it all. And what's going to come of it, I don't know. And I've said this line many times before on Linux Out Loud, but just like Princess Leia told Darth Vader, the harder you squeeze, the more things are going to slip between your fingers. And I think this might be one of those situations where they're squeezing too hard, too fast. And I think there's going to be some serious pushback at some point in time. I mean, every open source organization is pretty upset about this. And so, but how much persuasion does an open source organization really have? The right to repair? How much power do they actually have? With most people not paying attention, I don't really know. And so that's the part that concerns me. So I think being very vocal about pushing back against despotic authoritarian governments needs to be done. And this is a step way too far. This is way too far.
Because we have VPNs that are also on kind of the Chalkbeam blog, along with 3D printing in some of these areas. That's something that I've seen pop up quite a bit inside of my news feed. And so it's definitely something to keep an eye on, to be watchful for. And I know, like I said, me for myself, I have been loving using Linux on my system. My kids use it on all of their laptops. I just donated some of the laptops that Bill donated to me to a school that are now currently running Zorin OS, so they can use them in their robotics program. So it's everywhere, and it has the availability to take these older computers, make them useful, and go forward. But then, like, that, just the hardware hit in general of this thing that's constantly like checking each verification and then reporting that to apps when you open them, just seems like this horrible drain on resources in general. So this isn't the last time we'll be talking about this topic, though I'm hoping next time it's going to be like, hey, there's been enough pushback on this thing. You know, Discord kind of stepped back a little bit. Not that it's going away, as they are also complying with specific laws in the EU or whatnot that they're just trying to get ahead of. Not saying that I love the stance on things, but I guess where does this go from here? And are people paying enough attention? Not just us who care about those certain amounts of things, or gosh, I don't want this other additional thing running on my network, running on the system, eating RAM and whatnot, you know.
So let's talk about a couple guardrails, okay? And precedents. One precedent was Apple versus Great Britain. So the UK said we need to have a backdoor on all iPhones so that we can watch for harmful content that may be distributed. And Apple simply turned around and said, okay, we just won't sell our product in your country anymore.
Yeah.
And that went over like a lead balloon, and that legislation went away for now. Another piece of this is actually very practical and right in front of us. And Wendy, this is something you can probably relate to quite a bit. And that is, there are still some places that just don't have good internet access.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can't get out to the internet, how's your API going to work? I mean, I can tell you plenty of places that I travel to here in my own little state that have zero cell phone service.
Mm-hmm.
So offline installers, how are you going to pull that off? And then one other thing, since we've been talking about AI, I just asked a popular AI chatbot, actually two of them that I use, design for me an operating system. Let's talk about that for a second. So if modern everyday operating systems are going to have this age verification, and I can just tell an AI to build me an operating system from scratch in Rust, and it just called it BillOS.iso, then what's to stop a smart person from creating something completely different? And I'm thinking of a project like a Haiku OS.
Lipping between the fingers.
Right. Yeah. That's to your point that you made there, is that there are going to be lots of opportunities for either the picture that comes to mind is a popular drawing that I've seen out in people's offices, and it says never give up on the bottom, and it's a stork trying to swallow a frog, and the frog is choking the stork.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if you look it up, it's a commonly it's a common painting or photograph you might see in someone's office. And that's where we're going to end up with this, is the stork is going to try and swallow the frog, and meanwhile the frog has its arms around the stork's neck. I'm not going to give up.
Mm-hmm.
AI being released when it was, and how much it's proliferated in our society since then, I don't know if measures like this are really going to be successful at a mass scale. I think there's just too many roadblocks and tripping hazards and other places where it's just going to fall short, and the financial implications are just going to be too high.
Very, very good point.
That is a good point. Again, it's all untested. It's, we'll see what comes of this. Really, the companies that really need to do something about this, that have the power, are the ones that profit the most from technology right now. Microsoft should be pushing back. Apple should be pushing back. Don't know if they will, but they should be. Google should be pushing back. They could have. I mean, they have power to do something about this.
Well, another perspective is from the business world is the HR interview. I'm not allowed to ask job candidates their age. But am I going to have to start doing that to verify that they're old enough to access certain things? on our servers and on our network.
Right.
Because that could lead to age discrimination potentially, which is right now against the law.
Very much so. Yes, very much so.
Yeah, but companies don't follow that. I mean, maybe yours does, and mine does. But I'm saying like corporations. I worked for a corporation some years back. They were very much age discriminatory. If you hit a certain number in your 50s, like we're gonna get rid of you for somebody cheaper and younger. They would just do that.
I'll never turn 50, so I'm going to not have that problem. I'm permanently going to be the age that I'm at, and I'm okay with that.
There's a song like that, isn't it? Forever Young. Isn't it? The Napoleon Dynamite reference. That's 2 in one show. I think. Maybe it was the first one. I don't know.
And I know there's been a lot of like Star Trek references in this episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's important.
So we have lots of Star Trek references, 2 Napoleon Dynamite references, and a dad joke.
Wow. That
might be a good way to wrap up our episode here after all we've covered.
I think we should end it on a positive note somehow. And I'm not really sure how to do that.
We're all happy. There's your positive note.
I'm positive if I find out my operating system is doing some sort of spying on me, I will rip it out. I'll rip out whatever it is that's doing that. So
yeah, I would agree to that.
I'm positive I would.
All right, I can end this on a joke. I am positive, this is a science joke, I am positive that we're all using Proton.
Because I paused my game to be here? Was that it?
No, protons, neutrons.
They're in all of our atoms.
Really? Really? That went over everybody's head. Am I the only one? Oh, wow.
I was thinking, valve and steam and proton.
No, I went for like the proton mail. I said science. Physics is a form of science.
Okay.
Nate.
It's been a while.
Okay. I mean, I'm not Bill Nye the science guy. I'm just Bill the internet guy, but
I think you're cooler, actually. Yeah.
Guilty by association, sure. Well. I played a joke in an intern
my second favorite Bill.
I appreciate that. All right. So I do have a good way to end this. Funny story.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago, I was working in a school and I had picked up at a trade show these little USB sticks, and they were kind of in the shape of these little rubber duckies. But when you plug them in and you start writing to them, they would inflate. And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool gimmick. So I took one of my high school interns over to see this. And I said, I want to prove something to you. I want to prove that data has weight. And he said, that's not possible. And I said, come hither. So I plugged this in and I copied an ISO to the USB stick and it started to inflate. And I said, technically, does this stick weigh more than it did before I copied the file? And he said, no. And I said, well, yes, because there's more mass inside of it. If you were to really weigh it, technically it would have more weight. So data carries weight, even if very small. And I was told by a math teacher and a science teacher that is the worst possible example of the associative property that they have potentially ever heard in their careers.
I think that's good, though.
But I found it funny, and that was all that mattered at the time. And my intern left my office much more confused than when he entered. Thus, I had done my job for the day.
I'm thinking about that. Like, I'm going maybe the wrong direction or maybe the right direction. I don't know. We'll find out. But with spinning rust, you're just rearranging the direction of the magnets. But with the cells in a SSD, which I guess this is basically gold now, would you be adding electrons to it, or are you just rearranging how do these cells work in here? I don't know. I'm now going to imagine that you're adding electrons to it somehow, and that's how it works.
So, Wendy, I actually have succeeded in my mission today, which was to send Nate down some terrible rabbit hole which he is now going to waste hours researching, then post an article in cubiclenate.com and provide you additional content on another episode. So you're welcome. I'm glad I could help you out tonight.
Perfect.
You know what? We are going to research that now.
All right, Editing Wendy here, and I have something super fun to tell you. Nate did go ahead and make an article about this. You can find it here, and it's one of the articles that's actually been blowing up on cubiclenate.com. So really fun way to end the show. He actually wrote an article on it. I think he stayed up till almost 1 a.m. going through this and getting it done. So it's tons of fun. Go check out the Does That Have Weight article on cubiclenate.com. And that's going to do it for this classified briefing of Linux Out Loud episode 122. Nate, Bill, and I are headed back to the underground rack room to rotate keys, scrub logs, and figure out which new acronyms are coming to our distros next. Until next time, keep your backups offline, your configs under version control, and your threat model one step ahead of the next safety update. Thanks for joining us on another awesome episode of Linux Out Loud.